initially, I couldn't even name myself what had changed. Like, I couldn't use the word non-Christian because that was like, that's never a category that I'm gonna be in, so that can't be what I am. And then I was like, well, technically it is what I am. So I slowly came to terms with that, literally in my head, not saying the word out loud. Just took months because it was such a core part of my identity. Yeah, so the questions that I fundamentally started to ask when I was 15 were really about the kind of substance of the answers that we had to the big questions. I guess the closer I looked, if Christianity is a huge, beautiful, gorgeous mural, but like if you get up close, there's something grainy about, I thought that these things fit better than they don't fit very well at all. And so you have to kind of just close one eye and, find some way to cope with that. It's bigger than me, and who am I to understand? And I mean, even big things like just the way the Old Testament and the New Testament function together. I wrote a 20-page paper on that, and I felt like, okay, here's 4 different scholars and like the different ways that people, solve this problem. But again, I felt like none of them were totally satisfying answers to me about like, it still feels like a religion that got slapped onto another religion that didn't necessarily want this religion slapped onto it. Like when you just read the Old Testament, you're not like, oh, I know what's coming. I mean, you can go back and, reinterpret everything as we do as Christians to think it's all about the New Testament. This is all pointing towards the future, But I guess it always haunted me that it seemed like it was talking about 2 different gods. And then as I came to understand more about sort of how have people answered these questions in the past, like, oh, none of these are really satisfying. So we're all still kind of in the dark. But the beliefs themselves, they did not add up for me really starting when I was 15. But so I just kept kind of re-angling, maybe if I take this assumption away, okay, maybe the Bible is inspired, but not without error. So maybe God is speaking through it, but only like because of his Holy Spirit when we read it. I envisioned my life like always sort of agonized by these doubts, but like living with them somehow. But my goal was to stay in the faith. And that was part of what kept me moving from different, like, what's a version of this that I can live with and have integrity and be honest about it, and, and even if I don't understand it, it's something I can live with. So I was reading Steven Pinker, The Better Angels of Our Nature, and just a kind of a history of violence and understanding that we're actually getting less violent as a species. He was kind of looking at some of the violence in the Old Testament specifically, which had haunted me since I first read the Old Testament. But again, I was like, well, maybe these are embellished stories. I don't have to believe that this is exactly how many people were slaughtered. Maybe this is the king's version of it. And there just was this moment reading that I realized I don't have to defend this. I don't have to try to twist and contort my mind and my thoughts and my ideas about it. I can just kind of look at it. And when I look at it, it looks like something people patched together, not something that makes sense in some stream of superior truth level. Something broke at that point. But it took me a really long time to come to terms with what that meant, because I remember going to church, it was like almost a year later. The sermon was about Jesus wants to know, is he your Lord? And I was just like, I can't honestly say I think he is my Lord. So can I not be part of a group that wants to be like him anymore? And it was really, it was like looking down and realizing like the line that had always been behind me, in the circle. Suddenly I was like, oh, the line's right there. I'm out. I'm not in the circle. And like, I didn't feel like I moved. I didn't like run away. I didn't leave my faith. I just looked down one day and it wasn't there anymore, and the certainty that like, even if I don't understand it, even if it doesn't all make sense, it's true. That certainty was gone. But then, then the repercussions of like, oh, it was that certainty that made me part of this club. Yeah, I mean, I worked at a church, and so I felt like, all my time here, I have meant everything I've said, and so it's really important to me to also, not participate in something and not mean it, and but it was my job, and I loved it. That's what was I mean, I'm still in the middle of, years later grieving that, because it kind of was a dream job, to get to take ancient songs and try to make them feel really fresh and contemporary, but also somewhat ancient. And just get people singing together and get people bonding through music, and get to play music with really great friends who were amazing musicians. So the stakes were immediately clear. This has been my livelihood. This has been my connection to most of my best friends, with very few exceptions. This is my connection with my parents. This is this is how I feel respected by my peers, by my other, just wider community. I liked being part of a church community. I tried to keep going. I was like, maybe it'll be fine. But I respected the people too much to stay and lie about it. I just couldn't do that. So I resigned, and then I had this plan, I'll tell my parents, when they're older, in 10 years, maybe when they retire from ministry. And, I had a desire to just keep it as under wraps as possible, because I felt like it would be traumatic for the people in my life, because that, it wasn't, none of us are an island, and I had, as they had sort of kept me going in my faith, I had kept others going in theirs, and we had participated in this thing together. And so to be the one saying the emperor has no clothes, what you're saying is you're pretending he does have clothes and you're an idiot, and that's not what I didn't want to say that. No, I mean, maybe it can't make sense to me, but I could be wrong. I don't know. I didn't have any desire to. It's not just that I didn't want to disappoint or hurt the people. It's I've had a sense of respect for their faith, as we're all trying to figure out what's true. It's not evident. I think there was some shock and sort of denial, and then there was anger. That's you guys, you good, smart people, told me things that were not true, and I have spent almost 30 years living as though they were true, and I felt very. I mean, it's strange. Sometimes I feel angry, and sometimes I can't feel angry, because I think those people were completely genuine. It's not like they wanted to fool me. But that's what's hard to come to terms with, is that these are not the kind of Christians that are so often portrayed, in the public are simple and judgmental, and there's so many ways of oversimplifying kind of who they are. And having grown up deeply respecting the morals and the integrity and the honesty and the intelligence of not a couple, hundreds of thousands, the more I read, the more I traveled. I lived in England for one summer and worked at a Bible school where there were all these people from all over the world there. And, the experience compounded as I grew older, that there are so many amazing people who I can respect who really believe this. So that made it very disturbing to leave, because, if you're an outsider, you can be oh, there's a lot of really cool people who are Christians, interesting, but if you're, I don't know, because for me, leaving was sort of it just doesn't seem true. And that just implies that you think all these amazing people that are I love them. I don't want them to worry about me, and I don't want them to think I judge them. And so it was an extremely painful process to realize this is a category that really matters to them, and it's a category that has changed for me. My life with my children and my husband and my friends and my family is as precious to me as it ever was, and in some ways more, because there's suddenly it's this is all I'm sure we have. I don't know there's no life after death. Nobody knows anything about that, but it means that these days are so short, and such a gift. I thought I wouldn't be as good of a person if I didn't constantly rely on the Holy Spirit and sort of surrender regularly to the Word and to Him, and it's not true. And that has been, again, a huge relief to see that, oh yes, I am a mess still. I have many problems. Also, I am a beautiful person who loves deeply and sees the world in a way that is unique and special, and a lot of these things that I always just gave God credit for, they're in me, and so are the, broken parts. I think it's helpful to realize that if you're having doubts, it's because you care about what is true, and that is a good impulse. If your doubts pertain to time or space or science or philosophy or suffering, or read about those things, try to understand them, try to think about how people around the world through history right now are wrestling with these questions. You're not alone. There's a lot of people with a lot of questions. You know, for Jewish people, they can grow up Jewish, reject a lot of the Jewish beliefs about God, about the Torah and these things, and they could still be Jewish. So they could be Jewish atheists, you know, but we don't really have that category for people who are Christians but not Christian, you know? So that's how I feel. Like, I'm a non-Christian Christian, you know? I'm somebody who's like, definitely the beliefs do not make sense to me at all. They're not compelling to me. But there's so many values that I'm thankful to have been rooted in those growing up, and I think they're valuable to me now, and they're things I'm building on, not things I'm like, you know, bulldozed and starting over. Like, not being sure what you believe is way different than being like, I'm sure that I'm right about this. It's just a different, it's a way less unifying principle, even if it's true.
But I just can't help believing that our welfare is rooted in character, not in panaceas. To me, systems don't seem to count half so much as the right kind of men and women, like these kids are going to be.
You can get my vote on that any day.